let's take a look at how we can make a very simple and very primitive three-wall set sitting on a base using only the tools we've discussed in the early stages of exploring SketchUp. So we will work with our navigation tools, which are zoom, which we can also use with our mouse. We'll work with pan, we'll work with orbit, and we're going to be doing all of these tools in conjunction with all of the movements we make as we build this set. We're also going to use the select tool quite a bit. We'll use the line tool. We'll use the rectangle tool. We'll then work with grouping things and selecting them to group them, and then opening them up, editing them. Next up, we'll use our push-pull tool and our move tool, and finally our rotate tool. And we can use only these tools to create a basic little set. So let's start with our rectangle tool, and let's zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to start at this origin point, and I'm going to go from there, click once, move out, and I'm going to click again, and I'm going to make just what looks like a square to me. If I want to maybe move my view a little bit above it, I can go like that. And then if I want to get a real square, it's going to actually let me pop into a position where it will lock it into a square for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and click there. This is going to be the beginning of our slab that we build this three-wall set upon. Next up, go to select and double click the shape we've just drawn. We always do this after we draw a shape. We draw the shape, then go to select, double click to select it, then right click with our mouse and make group. Now we want to give this square some thickness. We want to make it a three-dimensional volume. So let's go ahead and double click while we have select selected and go over to our push-pull tool. Now that we are in an exploded group, exploded meaning it's just opened up. We're in an open group. That's a better term for it. Now that we are in an open group, you can see that you've got these dotted lines kind of surrounding the shape. That means that we are only working on this one shape, and we've got all of these raw parts and pieces, the lines and the face. This will allow us to click to push-pull, and then click once, and I'm going to move this down, and I'm going to type 3 feet or 3 apostrophe enter, and you'll see that number pop up in the distance box here. When we are done with this slab, we can click on our select tool and then left click out in space. That will close it. That means we can now select the entire thing and move it if we want, or if we want to edit it again, we'd have to double click to open it up. But we're done with our slab. That's a good start. So this is what we can start building our set upon. Let's do the first wall with the line tool. So let's go to line and then click here from one point. I'm just going to move my cursor along the red axis, and I'm going to type 20 feet enter, and that's going to give me a 20-foot line. The line tool will remain active until I finally make a full shape, which in this case will be a very narrow rectangle. I'm going to move along this direction, and I'm going to type 6 inches. We're going to assume that this is a double-sided wall, which a good standard for that is 6 inches thick. So maybe someday when we are building this set and we come around, we can view this set from both sides. Moving the cursor along the red axis back in the opposite direction, if I now hold shift, once I'm on that red axis, if I hold shift down, that's going to lock it in place and make it so that wherever I go, wherever I move my cursor, the line stays locked on that red axis. I want to move my cursor over to the original starting point. I don't want to take my finger off of the shift key until I'm completely done with this. My next step is to left click while referencing this point. So if I left click on my mouse, click, I can now take my finger off of shift because there's no reason to lock that line in place anymore. It's already been completed. My last step is going to be to left click to complete that shape. I now have a new shape sitting on top of my existing slab. So what I'm going to get is I'm going to get that little flickering effect that lets me know that these two planes, these two faces, are in exactly the same position in space, which is good. It means they are touching. And not only are they touching, they are completely on top of each other. So next up, select, and I can do this a few ways. I can double click to select it. I can use my selection tool from left to right and drag a window around the entirety of this shape. And because this outer group here is much bigger and I'm not able to fully encapsulate any of that shape with this selection, I will only select what's within this bounding box, which are these 4 lines and the face inside of them. So once I've done that, I can right click and make that a group, just like I did with the slab. And this time, instead of push pulling down, we are going to double click while we still have our select tool active, and we're going to go over to push pull, and we're going to click once on that face while this group is now open, and you'll see that it's active and I'm able to easily hover over that. And I click once, and I'm going to move this up in space. I'm going to make this 10 feet tall. So somewhat standard for a set wall to be 10 feet tall. Go over to select and click out in space because now I'm done. So we've got our back wall in place already. At this point, it might not be a bad idea to select our scale figure and use the move tool to navigate towards the bottom of that group. So I'm going to click on this bottom midpoint here, and then I'm going to zoom back and move that scale figure into place somewhere inside the set. This is just going to give me a better idea as I continue to build this set, how that set interacts with a standard reference figure. So it just kind of helps me see what it looks like if you've got a human being inside. So now we go back to our rectangle tool. I'm sorry, not back to. We started with the line tool for this one. Let's do a rectangle tool for this next wall. And I'll go ahead and go to my select tool and click out in space so that she's not selected anymore. So back to the rectangle tool. I'm going to start from this inside point, and I'm going to click once here and move down towards the opposite direction from that back wall. And I'm going to make this a 16 foot by 6 inch wall. So 16 feet, comma, 6, enter. So there's my second wall. This time I will activate select, and I will double click and then right click, make group. Now that that is grouped, I will double click to open it up with select still active, go over to push pull, click once on that face, move it up into space, and touch anywhere along the adjacent wall, and that's going to reference the same height as the wall next to it, so I don't even really need to think about it there. And then left click. This wall is done, so I can go back to select and click out in space. There's my second set wall. Let's do another set wall opposite, but instead of using the rectangle tool to draw again and basically redo everything we just did, it wouldn't be bad practice, but why not try a different tool? Let's go with move this time, and we'll make a copy of this wall. So we'll click on move, and I want to reference this corner. I basically want this corner of my copy to line up with this corner of the wall, because I know that I'm going to be going along this axis here and sliding it in a opposite direction. So if I click once on this corner, I'm going to get nice and close and click to start that move. I start that move sliding along the red. Now I hit my option key on my keyboard, and that's going to give me a copy. I move that copy along that wall using that line as a reference. I can hold shift down if I want to really lock it in place, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And if I get nice and close and touch that other corner and left click, that's going to give me a nice copy in place. Now I'm going to throw in an extra tool here. If we have already covered this, it's worth just taking a look at seeing how we can use it quickly to rotate this tool. If not, rotate this wall. If not, that's fine. Just we might be jumping ahead a little bit, but let's try rotating this set wall out 30 degrees so that we can see a little bit more of an angle, so it's not just a box of a room. So if I go ahead and, while this is selected, activate the rotate tool, which is right below move, I'm going to move my position so that the compass is on the ground. At this point, I might hold shift down to lock that compass into place so that no matter where I go, it stays locked to the ground. And then get into that corner with my cursor, left click. So what I've done first is I've driven that imaginary little spike of the compass right down through the center of this line. My next step is to grab something to rotate. Well, I've got the wall selected, luckily. So if I click on this outside point of this wall, left click here, I can now start to rotate. So that's click number 2. So we started with a click in the middle, now we've got a click here at the edge, and now we're just rotating that, and I want to get to 30 degrees. If I look up at my angle here, I can watch what the different degrees are as I go from point to point on this compass, and 30 degrees is where I want. I can either type it or I can just let it pop into place. It will magnetically connect. So I click, and that wall is now rotated. Okay, we've got a pretty good little set so far. Let's add a little slab here with some stairs leading up to it. I'll go to my select tool and just click out in space so that nothing is selected again. Now I'm going to go to the rectangle tool, and I'm going to start in this corner. Now that we have more and more information, we can always reference what's on our screen already. So this little slab that we're going to climb up is going to be, let's make this 10 feet by 6 feet. So if I type 10 feet, comma, 6 feet, enter. This is going to become a little deck that they'll be able to climb up. Select, double click, right click, make group, and then double click to open it up. Then we go over to push pull, and we click once on the face, and let's just bring this up 2 feet. This will just be a small deck here. And then we go ahead and go back to select and click to close. So there's our deck. I'm going to move the scale figure a little bit out of the way because we want to do some stairs here. And if I want, I can select the scale figure, use the move tool, and just reference somewhere on the floor, and it's going to maintain that distance, that space that I've created between what I've selected and where I've clicked. So I'm just going to use the floor as a reference to move the scale figure away. I don't have to, if I accidentally grab the scale figure by a different point, it might drag that figure down into the ground, and that's not what I want. So I just want to use the floor as a good guide. Okay, we are looking at a 2-foot platform, so we're going to need, for the sake of ease of actors getting up, we're going to simplify this and make the steps each 6 inches in a rise, and we'll do 12 inches as the tread depth. So let's keep that in mind. We'll need 4 full risers or 4 full steps to get up to the top of this, including the deck itself. So we might end up eliminating one of the steps after we've made it. So let's just focus on the very first step. Let's use the rectangle to make a tread that is 4 feet by 12 inches. And let's then go to our select tool and double click and then right click and make group. Then we can double click and go to our push pull and push pull up and type 6, enter. Then select and click out in space. I want to copy this step 3 more times. So I'm going to move it using the move tool, and the ground is a reference over a little bit so it's a little easier to see. And I'm going to start from this bottom inside corner, and I'm going to click once. While it's selected, I'm going to hit Option and move my cursor in a diagonal direction so that I'm referencing the bottom inside corner to the top inside corner. And then I'm going to type ×3, enter. And now that I've got my 3 steps, or X3, enter. So this gives me that's 3 copies plus the original. I can now select using my selection tool and right click and make group. And then I've grouped these together, so if I were to open this up by double clicking, I'd be able to still click on individual groups within. I can then move this using my move tool back towards that slab, and then if I want to move it back towards that wall, I can do it like that. And I actually probably want to get rid of that top step, so I'll double click that group, or I'll double click that group, and that will allow me to select that top tread and delete it. Then click out in space again, and then I can use my move tool to move it back towards that slab. The last thing I want to do is throw a little door here. So I will double click to open that wall up. I'll select the face of the shape that I want to edit, and then I will go to my rectangle tool, and I'm going to arbitrarily start somewhere at the bottom of the base of the set, and I'm going to click once, move my cursor up in space, and I'm going to do a door that is 3 feet, 7 feet, enter. And then push pull while I'm still in that group. Click once on that face, move my push pull in towards the back face, and once it says on face, I know it's touching the opposite face, and I can left click to give myself that opening. Left click and click. So from here, we can start continuing to add more and more detail. But using just the very basic drawing and moving tools, we were able to, in a relatively short time, build up a little 3-wall set that we can start using to figure out our scene. And we will obviously add more tricks and more details to this as we go, but this is definitely a great start. At this point, I would save and close. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.